Please welcome to our stage Stacy Francis, President and CEO, Francis Financial, founder of Savvy Ladies.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to have you all here. And we have a sold out event tonight. So I know that there's lots of space. So I want everyone to do this right now. Stretch. That's going to be the last time that you can do that because we have such a great event tonight. We have 150 people more than we had last year. And it's because the message of Savvy Ladies is getting out there. The mission of Savvy Ladies is getting out there. The reason why we are here tonight is because there are some pretty scary statistics that Savvy Ladies is trying to change. Women are 3 times more likely than men to say they cannot afford to save for retirement, and they have significantly lower financial literacy rates. In fact, they just did a study. They put financial fitness quizzes in front of men and in front of women. Only 20% of the women passed. The number of men who passed was double that. And it's not only that, but we make less money. We live longer, and not only do we live longer, our expenses are higher. And we talk a lot about the wage gap, and we are getting closer. We earn about 1/2 cent more each year. So based on that, it's going to take us about 46 more years for us to equal that pay parity. And what I found was shocking. I mean, I've known about the wage gap for many years, but what does it really mean? So a woman who's graduating high school, it means that she's going to have $700,000 less in her pocket over her working years. A woman who graduates college, that number skyrockets, and she misses out on $1.4 million of earnings over her years. So women are starting out financially behind. But something that we still struggle with is that our society still, I don't know if the right word is okay, but many individuals still rely on others to make financial decisions for them. And one of the most important things women can do is to stand up and take agency over our finances, to invest in ourselves, to invest in our own financial education, because we need to be smart with our money. Like I said, we live longer. We have less saved. And so it's phenomenally important that we attend and learn from Savvy Ladies. It's phenomenally important that we support Savvy Ladies. And the question that I have for you before we start our panel, what would your life be like if you knew more about money? Right? What would your life be like? And I think for all of us, our life could be better. And that is what Savvy Ladies is all about. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our wonderful, wonderful moderator for our panel of illustrious guests here tonight, and all of our award recipients that you will be seeing later tonight getting some very special awards for their amazing work. Suzanne Syracuse.
Great. Oh, I think I'm mic'd. I don't think I need that though, Stace. I don't need it. Well, first of all, welcome, and thank you, Stacy. And I just want to take a second to acknowledge Stacy for really committing to a cause, to a mission, and that is to helping women that are in crisis become more financially independent, and to educate women on money issues, as well as information about advancing in their career. And it takes a lot of determination and time for someone to dedicate she's got a full-time job, let's face it, right? This is a full-time job too, and she makes it work. So I just would like to give one round of applause, another round of applause for Stacy, and for Lisa, that makes it all happen. So welcome, thanks for coming early and having an opportunity to listen to some of the journeys of our fantastic panel that we have today. So the session title is Lessons in Leadership, the Journey Towards Professional and Personal Financial Independence and Freedom. And before we get started, though, I want to take out the page of Stacy's book, which is to start off with some staggering statistics. And I was sitting here thinking, please don't let us have the same statistics. And we don't, but they're equally as shocking and not very good. So the first thing I'd like to just kind of point out, and you probably have heard some of these before, but in 2020, which is next year, it's estimated that women in the US are going to control over 22 trillion, that's with a T, dollars. Women are earning more master's degrees, doctorates, undergraduates than their male counterparts. So that's great, right? However, despite those facts and the growing attention to gender pay parity, research is showing that nothing is really improving to the degree that it should be. And actually, the most advancements that we've seen actually took place in the 1980s and 1990s. So with that, women on average earn 80 cents of the dollar compared to their male counterparts. The gap is even wider for Black women, who earn 62 cents on the dollar. Hispanic women are the real, I would say, the real victims here, 54 cents on the dollar. Asian women, 87 cents on the dollar. And Caucasian women, 79 cents on the dollar. So even within the segment of women, when you break it down, it's even more of a tragic story. And that adds up to, the gap in earnings translates into over $10,000 less per year in median earnings. So that's significant money. And in addition, mothers who work full-time are typically paid only 69 cents on the dollar for every father that is working. So those are significant differences in pay. And I think that one of the things that Savvy Ladies is trying to do, and what many of you that are here do in your jobs and in your personal life, is to help change that. Clearly, we still have a lot of work to do, and what we're hoping to accomplish today on the panel is learn from storytelling and from experiences, and as our panelists share what they've learned and how some of those best practices can be applied to some of you in the room, or to maybe someone you know, or maybe your daughter or niece. So the session description is that a lot of the women that are here, all of the women that are here, are in top leadership roles in financial service firms. But that is the exception rather than the norm. So what I'd like to do is really learn a little bit more about how they got here, a little bit more about their journey, and some advice that they have for all of us that I think will also inspire us as we leave here tonight. So first, I'm going to begin with some bios. I'm going to shorten them because you probably know a lot of these women and their accomplishments already. But I'm going to start off with two of our award recipients for tonight. The Changemaker of the Year Award, Kate Healy, who's right here to my left, Managing Director, and I think she's the coolest title in the business, of Generation Next, TD Ameritrade Institutional. Kate leads the Next Gen and Women's Leadership Initiatives that support the future of the profession through programs designed to raise visibility, provide support and resources to guide professional development of Next Gen advisors. So welcome, Kate. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you for your great work and all of that you are doing for the profession. Next, we have our second award winner tonight, another Changemaker of the Year, and that is Cheryl Nash. Cheryl is the president of investment services at Fiserv. She drives the strategic vision for the industry-leading technology solutions in wealth management. She also serves as an Envestnet Institute on Campus advisory board member, where she leads the Women in Wealth Management Initiative, a program dedicated to inspiring, advising, and educating career-focused women. So another perfect panelist here. So welcome and congratulations. Next up, we have Alice Rodriguez, Managing Director, Head of Community and Business Development at JP Morgan Chase. Alice is responsible for helping to drive the growth and profitability of a portfolio of approximately $2 billion in revenue and comprised a national consumer base of over 10 million households. Alice has received so many awards in her career and for her work, especially in the areas supporting women and the Latina communities. welcome Alice, and thank you for your work in those communities. And last but certainly not least is Anna Fink. Anna is Senior Vice President of Amalgamated Bank and Executive Director of Amalgamated Foundation, where she leads the foundation's grant-making and donor advice fund services. Now, Anna is here not only to share her journey with us, but also to accept the Savvy Inspiration Award on behalf of her grandmother, Gertrude Glass Borman, who was an early advocate for women's rights in the workplace. And when you hear her story later, there's no way that you're not going to be inspired. So we're really excited and honored to have you here, and thank you for all your good work. So welcome to Anna. So I've just read a little bit about your bios, but what I always like to start out with is for each panelist to tell us a little bit about their journey, how they got here, how'd you get in financial services, what was your first money memory, and why is this topic so important to you? So Kate, we'll start with you.
All of that all at once?
Yes, and yes.
Break that
You can,
apart?
yes, you can break it apart.
I think I've always been interested in money, but from the psychological aspect of it, I always thought of money as a tool. I'm always amazed by how people use it and what they use it for, and whether or not you have a lot or have a little, there's still so much that you can do with it. And I think back to my first money memory. I was thinking about this when you asked us these questions, and I was at the Jersey Shore, and I remember being on the beach with my dad and looking at a house in Bay Head. So if you know the Jersey Shore, it was a very expensive house. And I said, Daddy, I was about 5. If you buy me that house now, I will pay you back when I'm 18, but I'll pay you more money. So I don't know how I knew this, but I knew this whole concept of present value of money and time value of money and all that. And he looked at me and said, no. But it's what made me start to think about, well, what could I do then? What were the kinds of things that I should be thinking about to start to save for the future and start to do that? And I just, from family history, I saw what money could do from an educational perspective, how it could really create a family. I tell the story often of, my father served in both World War II and Korea. And so those 2 GI Bills gave him a college education and a master's degree, and then, propelled him in his career. And I watched how that helped our family. So it's just one of those things that I've always been fascinated with, and I'm a huge believer in sitting down and planning and thinking that through and what financial planning can do for everyone. It's why I am passionate about the career, and having been in this career for over 30 years. The difference in gender from when I started to now, and I look around and all the women that I started to work with, they're not here anymore. And so that, made me think that there is still so much that we've got to do to make sure that we're teaching people about what this great profession is, but how do we keep them there?
Yeah, that's
it's
great.
a little bit outside, but.
I think it'd be great just to share, what do you spend most of your time doing as, Executive Director Generation Next, and that's such a creative title that TD Ameritrade really kind of planted the stake, saying we're going to make sure that this is a important initiative, that we're going to actually carve out an entire role devoted to this.
Yeah, and so the Generation Next is kind of a play on Next Gen, but it's for just that, for people to ask me, what does that mean? Because I define the next generation differently. I define it as anyone who's not here today. So it's bringing young people into the profession, but it's bringing people who haven't been welcomed in this profession before. So it's bringing in more women, bringing in more people of color, people who are returning to the workforce after being in the military or raising a family, and people who are career changers. So it's so important to understand the demographic shifts that are happening. So I really focus on, my day-to-day is to really help educate advisors about who they need to be focused on for their next generation of planners and advisors that they're bringing into their firms, as well as the clients that they're going to focus on and how different they're going to be. And what that next generation of advice should look like, because maybe the AUM model isn't it, and maybe all the things that we're talking about with investments aren't it. And then I do spend a fair amount of time in the industry talking about this, working with the CFP board on different initiatives, and also going to college campuses and helping the program directors as they're looking to really make that pipeline and create those connections between the students that are studying financial planning and the financial advisors who are looking for those students in their succession plans.
Yeah, that's great. It's such an important role. So anyway, congratulations again. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Cheryl, how about you? If you want me to repeat the question,
No,
or
I
you
think
kind of
I-
know what you got?
Let me start with money memory. So my husband's here, and he probably doesn't even know this story, but I have a sister who's
Uh-oh.
2 years younger than I am, and we're very competitive. We were growing up. We actually shared a bed, and we would draw a line, and if we went over that line, we would get in big trouble. But one of the things that we did together was we went to ballet class. And when we were young, we weren't good dancers. We weren't really good at ballet, but we went to ballet class. And at the end of ballet class was a recital. And I was 6 and she was 4. And when it got time to go to the recital, my parents couldn't afford to buy the outfit and the shoes, so we didn't participate in the recital. And we talk about that. My mom actually went to the recital woman and she said, "Can I make them their clothes?" And they said, "No, you can't. You have to buy the clothes." And that memory stuck with me, that I never want that for my family and my kids. And I always want to make sure that I do better so that they can get what they want and what they work for. Because we actually worked for that recital. Because like I said, we didn't have real good twinkle toes. So that was my earliest memory, and that made me always remember that. And when we were growing up, my mom made all of our clothes. So we weren't growing up in a family that we were given a lot, but we didn't care. We didn't even know that. We had a great life growing up. So when I think about giving back, and I think about what some of the things that we do, and like you were saying around college campuses. So my best friend Jim Seifert's here, and Jim and I and his wife, we actually have spent time going to college campuses and talking to women who are juniors and seniors. And probably one of the most amazing things when you do that is they don't understand that they really have an opportunity to have an enriching career in wealth management or financial services. They think they need to be an investment banker. They think it's a man's world. They still think about the old Wall Street, movies and shows. So the best thing is going out there and telling them that you can do so many things. You can be in marketing. You can be a product manager. You can be in HR. You can be a client services. You can have a great relationship that you can have with an investor. You can be a financial advisor. So that's where I think, and I get, a lot of, passion is really helping these younger, and I have a young daughter too, helping them understand that there's opportunities for them to do just as well as their brothers or their friends in financial services. And I have a very diverse team. They're sitting right here. And I truly believe diversity, diverse of thought, all that is really important. And then for the minorities, I'm actually on a board for MMI, which is called Gateway to Leadership. And we actually work with colleges that are primarily African American, and we're also going after Hispanic colleges and helping get scholarships for young kids to come into our industry. And it's been really successful. We've seen great growth in some of these women who've come in to our industry, and it's just been another great thing to give back.
That's great. And I know just from knowing you for so many years, the great work that you've done, and the InvestNet Institute on campus, and what its mission is to really educate college students on the benefits of becoming a financial advisor, and how important that is, and how the reputation has changed quite a bit. So that's such important work. And again, if you're a financial advisor, it really, your role is to not sell product, but to help people live their better life. So that's great. Alice, why don't we talk about you and your journey?
Thank you. I think I'll start with a little background of where I came from, because to be honest, I would have never dreamt when I was a little girl that I would have ended up in financial services. But my mother was an immigrant from Mexico, and neither one of my parents attended high school. So I wasn't around a lot of people that had been to college. But the one thing both of my parents had was an extremely strong work ethic. And they did what they had to put food on the table. So one of the things my mother would do in the summers is pack her 4 children in a car and drive all the way from South Texas to Illinois so that she could go do migrant work with her family. And so she'd drop me off with one aunt, she'd drop my sister off with another aunt, and she'd take my brothers with her. And it was that summer, like the first summer we were there in Chicago, that my aunt took us to the Sears Tower. I don't think it's called that anymore. I think it's the Willis Tower, but it's the tallest, building at the time in the world. And so here's this little girl from Brownsville, Texas, where the tallest building was like 3 stories, and we're going up, over 100 floors. And I guess it was like curiosity that got me to thinking about my first money, moment, because it kind of struck me when we were there that nobody in our family worked at the Sears Tower. Everybody worked at a meat packing plant. They were doing migrant work. It was, a lot of very difficult and manual jobs. And I remember, going back that evening to my aunt's house and asking her, like, why doesn't anybody in our family work at the Sears Tower? Now, I'm like a 8 or 9-year-old kid, and in those days in particular, right, children were more, they were only not supposed to be heard, but just seen. And so there wasn't very much of a response, but I would say that from that moment forward, I was just super curious about what does it take to work at the Sears Tower? What kind of education do people have to have? I was the first one in my family to graduate from college, and having seen just how hard my parents worked and how, unfortunately, when they passed away, they had nothing. And just always thinking through, right, as I was growing up, that I want to change that trajectory for my own children. I have 3 daughters, 30, 29, and 27. And it was super important to me to really teach them about money. I ended up at the bank, to be honest, after working a year for a property management company and thinking to myself, well, I'll get this job at the bank because I really want to be an entrepreneur. And I'll meet a lot of bankers, so when I need to borrow money, I'll know where to go. And 33 years later, I'm still at the bank. And so some of the people that I used to, when I was, in my 20s, I'd say, I can't believe people work here for 25 years. And I became one of them. But I have no regrets because I've had the opportunity to do a lot of different things at the bank, and also spent time in the Chase Wealth business. And again, just that curiosity of, how do you continue to build wealth always stayed with me. And so I have a very big passion for giving back, particularly, to the Latinx community and helping. When you think about the stats, the average median net worth in a Hispanic household is $21,000, and that compares to $18,000 for a Black household and $171,000 for a white household. So, those disparities, it's very, very big. So thank you for what you're doing with the minority communities.
Great. Wow, that's an amazing story. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay,
Anna.
great. Well, I also never imagined ending up in the financial sector. I started out as a student activist, really wanting to fight the system. My first money memory that I was going to talk about was right out of college. I applied for a job with a community organizing group. And I walked in the door and they had me fill out a form. And on the form, I remember it said, how much money do you need to make? And I was like right out of college, so I wasn't even sure how to answer that. And I was like, maybe $10,000, I don't know. So that was a real lesson in why it's really important to both know how to manage your own money, but I also sort of moved into a role in philanthropy and really became to appreciate the critical role that resources play, not just at the individual level, but also around any kind of change you want to make in the world. So I ended up at Amalgamated Bank, which is a really unique financial institution. It was founded almost 100 years ago by the immigrant women who worked in the sweatshops in New York and who put their money together and formed a bank at a time when nobody else wanted to take their money. And so I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but my own great-grandmother was a member of the union that formed this bank. And so it really inspires me in terms of thinking about the bank's resources and what we do today with the bank and our mission. And I think it's really not that different between the individual and the collective. In either case, we need to be able to be at the table where the resources are in order to be able to influence the agenda. And to be able to advocate for ourselves, both personally and collectively, as women in the workplace who are facing a unique set of challenges. So I thought I'd say one other thing about what I've sort of thought about as I've moved through these various different sectors, from nonprofit to philanthropic to the financial services sector, is to really look at the work and leaders around me and who's inspiring me, and to really cultivate those relationships and see myself and see how I can build based on that set of growing relationships and networks.
That's great, and I can't wait for everyone to hear a little bit more about your grandmother. So anyway, thanks for being here and for sharing that. So I'd really like to kick off everyone talking a little bit about I feel like you learn a lot when you've learned a lesson somehow, and it could be a tough lesson, it could have been a great lesson, but I'd like to first start with Kate on that one. How have the lessons that you've learned led you to where you are today? And how did Financially Savvy help with this?
That's a great question. So many lessons,
Yeah.
so many lessons learned in a career. But, I think two that stand out are, early in my career, and it both comes down to that having the right culture, being the right place. So one of my first roles, I got a new boss, and I was an accountant. I was a fund accountant, and there was an issue with some of the pricing that we got, or not with the pricing. The pricing was fine. It was how we were paying for some of the feeds that we were getting, and I would recalculate them every month. This was early days of computers, so we would do it on the computer, and then we would check it, by hand. There was a discrepancy, and I remember I went back to our vendor, and it said, we owe you more money. And my boss pulled me aside later and said, "Why would you ever do that?" And I said, "What do you mean? We owe them money?" And he's like, "Yeah, but they didn't know." And I was like, "Oh, no, I'm sorry." First off, they would, of course, found out. I mean, but it just from a morals perspective, how could you even think to do that? So I just thought, well, ethically, you're not someone that I want to be associated with. So I continued to work for him for a little bit, but I actually moved myself into another role in that company. And I think, you talked about the financial savviness of it. One of the greatest gifts, and I'll talk about this later, that I got in life was from my parents, and just the self-worth that they instilled upon us, that we and how we had to work for what we got. Thinking of your stories, it's, we grew up, I have 5 siblings, my sister is here today. We would work for things, but you always felt like you had a back, whether it was the family or whatever. And so, you really thought through how you could, I felt like I was protected. So I knew that my brain power, my work ethic, and all of those things would keep me okay. Mm-hmm. And so in a similar situation, a little bit different, but I worked for someone who did not like me. So on day one...
How is that possible?
On day one, this person and I, he was not my boss at the time, and we just, in a meeting, and I answered the question, and he didn't like my answer, and we just went back and forth for a little bit. He had a difference of opinion of how something should be done, and whatever, no harm, no foul. And my boss at the time called me and he said, that was great, but you just made an enemy. And I'm like, I'm doing my job. And so time went on, and this person became my boss, so I knew that was going to not be sustainable. And having the confidence, and because I had the financial know-how to make sure that I was saving for my future or figuring out ways to make myself okay, I was able to say, you know what, this isn't a person that I want to work for. It's not going to go well, right? He doesn't like me, so that's never going to continue to go well. But I think it's a confidence that you have to have, that I was smart enough to know that some of it was me, but it wasn't all me, so that mm-hmm. there was enough of it that I could find another place where I would be okay. And having the confidence instilled in me from that early age to say, maybe, yes, I'm part of the problem, I'm some of it, and I have to own that, but I'm not the whole problem, and I'm not going to crumble because someone doesn't like me and doesn't agree with how I'm doing something. I can move myself and find myself another position, and, did and have, found myself a role that I've been able to grow into, and just had a phenomenal career since that time.
Yeah.
So I think it's just that confidence and that knowing how you'll be okay.
I think that is a critical lesson, right? Because throughout your career, you're going to find people that you just don't jive with, and you maybe don't have the same vision. And it's really up to you to be able to say, I'm going to take myself out and go do something else that I really believe in. So good for you. Cheryl, how about you?
I can so relate to your story.
I think we all
We'll
can,
talk
right?
names later.
We'll talk names, that's right. So a couple of things. So similar to how you said you started in your company and kind of grew up there, I've grown up in my company as well. I actually started as an intern and have been in the same company for over 30 years and have worked my way up to president. So I played probably every role within the company except for development and QA and a couple of HR and a couple others. But being in that and kind of growing up in a company and taking on different roles, one of the things that I really learned and sometimes learned the hard way was to ask for help and to make sure I never said no to anything. And I still to this day, really work on always trying to do the right thing, but always say yes to take on more. But I've learned over my career to always ask for help, and I'm starting to do that more and more. But I would say that if you don't, and as you grow up in a company or you grow up in your career, as you take on more senior level roles, you're going to get more to do, and you need to surround yourself with the best people, because if you don't, you will get crushed. So I will say I've learned that the hard way, and I've spent a lot of time really making sure I had the best team, the best people around me to make sure that I can delegate when needed, but also that I can turn to if I have a question or an issue. And one of the things too that growing up at this industry, and like you said, there's not that many women left, and you do too. I have my core women who I hang out with, and I make sure that on a quarterly basis we get together. Actually, Jim's not a woman, but he's one of them. But what I've
He's
done
a male
is,
ally.
He's a male ally. But what I've done is actually created a personal advisory board and made sure that I've got people around that I can turn to when I need to. So I would say always ask for help when you need help, because I think sometimes women especially will just keep taking on more and not ask for help until they realize, oh my gosh, I really need somebody to help me with this. So that would be my good lesson that I've learned over my career.
I think those are actually two great lessons, and especially with women, tend to think they need to be perfect before they raise their hand for anything, for a promotion, or ask for help. It's definitely more prevalent with women that they think it means that they can't do the job. So again, I think there's so much put on everyone, and their jobs are multifaceted. So to be able to just say, I need help, and I think you almost need to have the confidence first in order to do that.
Absolutely do.
Right?
Yep.
So it's like the confidence, then you can actually get the ability to ask for help. It's an interesting formula. So Alice, how about you?
So I've had the opportunity to move with the bank several times, and early in my career, I would say the lesson that I learned, and it was a hard lesson, particularly when it hits you financially, is not doing your homework. So I remember the first time I was asked to move, you're just so excited, like, wow, it's a new job, it's a promotion, and this is great. And there's not that many women in this particular territory, and there's definitely no minorities in this territory. So just kind of jump at it. And then all of a sudden recognizing, well, I don't think that pay was enough. I don't think that moving cost was enough. And then having to pay a lot, out of my pocket. And so a hard lesson to learn, but obviously I got better at it over time. And I remember the last move I made was I went to California after we had acquired Washington Mutual. And this time I was like totally prepared, like I know what the cost of living there is. My house in Texas costs 2.5 times in California, and so on and so forth. And not feeling embarrassed, by the way,
Right.
that I was going to be telling the bank, like, this is what it takes. This is the number. If you want me to go and do that, I'm happy to do it, but it's going to take this number. Whereas early in my career, even as I got better at it, you felt a little like, well, I'm embarrassed. I should be really excited about this opportunity and jumping for joy. But never short sell yourself, and definitely do your homework.
Another great points. And again, I think women tend to be a little bit more agreeable, right? At first, like, oh, sure, I'll take that on, or that sounds good. But, asking for what you're worth and doing your homework are great. Those are great lessons, great examples. And Anna, how about you?
Well, I feel like having moved from between several different sectors, I've learned to live with a deep sense of imposter syndrome. And that it's okay. You can go into a new sector and it's okay that you don't know everything about it on day one. And that it's okay to really learn on the job, and that a lot of skills, a lot of problem solving knowledge is very transferable between one sector and another. And I think the other thing that I would say that I've learned, particularly in this job, is that nobody's necessarily going to tell you or ask you to do something new or to build something new. So when I got to this company, we didn't have a foundation, and I worked in business development for about a year and really worked in the sector of growing our business with within philanthropy. And a couple of times I would say, I think we should actually have a foundation that would make a difference in terms of how we're seen and in terms of how we're able to deepen our relationships. And then people would kind of nod their heads or agree, but finally one day I realized nobody else was going to make it happen. So I put together a memo. I took it to our spend committee, and to my shock and surprise, it got green-lighted, and I ended up being the executive director of the foundation. So you have to be careful what you ask for.
Yeah. But what a great example of just kind of taking the bull by the horns and doing it yourself, and and following your dreams. So that's great. So we talked a lot about lessons, and again, I'm a big believer in storytelling and learning through stories. Why don't we talk, and we'll start with you, Cheryl, about a risk, right? So most of the people that I've interviewed on these kinds of panels, one consistent factor is that everyone's taken some kind of risk to get to where they are, right? And sometimes that's a really hard thing to do. And especially if you're beginning your career, or if you're, I guess any point in your career, anytime you take a risk, it's a little bit difficult. Cheryl, why don't you tell us a little bit about like a risk that either paid off for you or maybe didn't so much that you'd like to share?
So, as growing up in the company that I worked for and taking on many different roles, one role that I was asked to take on many years back was to run a business analyst team. And I am much more, I would say, more of a communicator, more creative, more marketing versus business analysis. And I remember actually saying to my husband, I'm not sure I can do this job. And I was able to do the job. The woman who was running the company at the time didn't take no for an answer, but I was scared, and I didn't know that I could actually help people, because I didn't think I could do it, that I could actually help a team write functional specs and really design specs for new products. And that was one of the most growing opportunities for me in my career, because it helped me get into a role of leading product. And when I understood how important it was to have the right requirements and the right business and functional specs and what that meant to building product, it was such a good lesson. But I almost said no to that, and I think if I would have said no to that, I don't think I would have gotten the job that I have today, because I don't think I would have continued to evolve and grow. So I did take a risk because I didn't feel like I could actually do that, but I actually got much stronger doing something that I didn't think I had the capability of doing. So.
That's a great example. Thank you. Alice, well, let's move to you. And have you had to take some risks in your career?
Lots of risks in the different jobs that I've taken, but very similar to Cheryl, the job I'm in today, I would say, felt very risky for me, because my entire career had been spent on the client-facing side. So, I'd led sales teams, whether it was on the business banking side or on the consumer side or on the wealth side, which I was super comfortable with. And I absolutely loved being in front of clients and being with the bankers and the advisors. And this job was more about, it was definitely on the staff side, but it was working with, product and digital and marketing and designing, product specifically to help all of our clients from a financial health perspective. So a lot more strategy involved from that perspective. And to be candid, I just didn't know if I was going to A, like it, and then B, be good at it, because it's a very different skill set to be in that place. And it made me feel super uncomfortable, when I first started, because you're just trying to absorb a lot of new information. And again, it's just a whole different way that you're processing how you're going to be successful and how you're going to get the outcomes. And you're having to do a lot of influence with a lot of people. But like Cheryl, I'm like super glad that I did it, because I've learned so much in the last 2 years. And more importantly, I feel like the things that we're doing at the bank to support our clients and all consumers actually with becoming more financially healthy has been extremely rewarding.
That's great. Do you ever play this game where you're like, well, what's the worst that can happen? Right? Where you kind of do this like, all right, let's well, if I hate it, I can do it for a year, and then here's my backup plan, right? So sometimes there's that whole ability to just problem solve and create a secondary plan if your risk doesn't work out.
But you kind of beat yourself up. I mean, when I reflect now, I thought, wow, that was a lot of energy I spent worrying about
Negative
this
energy,
thing.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Too much energy. Too much energy. Anna, how about you?
I think I sort of just talked about a major risk.
Yeah.
I will also say I feel like when it felt like the riskiest to me was when I had little kids and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do in terms of my career, what was next. I was working for a foundation, and I had like a 2-year-old and a baby, and I was ready to make a change in terms of job, and I just felt like balancing those commitments at home and wanting to spend time with my family and wanting to be really successful and make sure that I was making a good move professionally. That was when I feel like that sense of risk felt heaviest to me.
Yep. And Kate, we'll close with you.
So I think the risk I took, I probably didn't think of it as much of a risk at the time because I was younger. So when I was about 27 or 28, my firm was being sold to another firm, and they were moving. So we were all losing our jobs. And I took my severance package, which I thought was huge at the time, which was not. I did learn negotiating through that. But I'd been exposed to financial advice, and I thought it was phenomenal and that I could be a financial planner. And so I took my severance package, and I just bought my first condo. I was 27, 28 years old, and I became a financial planner, or I tried to become a financial planner. And I was not successful at it. I had great training. I learned all about the products. It added on to the knowledge I had, but I hated the selling piece. It was dial for dollars. I was studying for my CFP exam. The firm at the time made me stop taking the exams so I could concentrate on dialing for dollars more. And I remember this woman, you could tell she was elderly, and she picked up the phone for my call, and she said, yeah, I'll meet with you. And I took every ounce of my being to not say, what, are you kidding me? You don't know me? Why? And I thought, wow, sales is so not for you. This is not going to be something that you are going to be successful at. And so my 2-year career as a
You didn't even
financial
want to
advisor-
buy from you.
I didn't want to buy from me. So at 28, 29, I packed up my financial advising career. But I think, while that itself was a failure, it's what built my passion into also creating a profession where we don't expect people to come out of college and bring in their own clients.
Yeah.
Because we don't expect doctors to bring in their own patients. There's so much that we do, and it's such a bad perception that we have in this industry that it's all Wolf of Wall Street, and you've got to come out of here and bring in a book of business when you're 23 years old and your friends have no money, they have student loan debt, your parents might have money, but after you run out of your relatives, how do you build a business? And how do we create a real profession that allows people to come in and learn the business in a different way, and partner them with teams and have internships and residencies and have them roll into it? Now, I could be a financial advisor. It's a different skill set. You have a different confidence level. it's more about relationships. It's not about product sales. It's how you do that. And so it was a failure, but it pushed me into, I think, harder into my career, that I always supported financial advice. And now, obviously, it's really become kind of a catalyst behind what I do in my role at TD Ameritrade.
Absolutely. Thank God you didn't. Thank God it wasn't successful for you, because we wouldn't have you as the role model you are in our industry. So, so I want to move on to really the importance of a support system and the power of community, and that's true with no matter who you are, but I think it's especially true with women in financial services, where there's such a low representation. And there's, obviously mentorship and sponsorship. They're both a bit different. But I'd like to lead this off with Cheryl, who's pretty passionate about this topic. And you mentioned it a little bit, but you started out as an intern, and you're now the president, right? That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the past honorees, Lisa Dolly, who was the CEO of Pershing, she just left in July. She was in the same thing. She started as an intern and became the president and CEO. So how did that happen, other than you just being super talented? Were you sponsored? Were you mentored? And how has that affected how you behave now with the next generation?
So I'd say all of the above, right? So yes, I've had great mentors my entire career, people who I can turn to and ask questions of, and people who had different strengths than I did. So if I needed help with some financial things or things that were going on at that moment in my career, I can turn to. And mentorship to me is really important. I mentor 7 women right now, and none of them, it wasn't formal. It all kind of happened. They all started calling me or reaching out to me or asking for help. And now, just one of them, who is in a different business unit at Fiserv where I work, is really struggling right now. She got a job that she thought was a big promotion, and she got the job yesterday, and there's no promotion. It was nothing that she expected it to be, and she picked up the phone and called me. So you need people like that, and I had people like that my entire career that I could pick up the phone and call when I'd had questions or issues or something was really not right, and I needed somebody to guide me so that I can get the right advice. So mentorship is so important, and it doesn't have to be a very formal process. You can mentor, especially women who are coming up, or minorities who are coming up. You can mentor them because they need your advice, they need your guidance, they need your help. And that's something that I truly believe in. Sponsorship is different because you have sponsors, but you actually sometimes don't even know they're your sponsor. In my entire career, I've had sponsors. And when people ask me, how do you get a sponsor? I want a sponsor. Can I ask someone to be my sponsor? You can't. Somebody will pick you because they see you as somebody who is passionate, is a hard worker, and behind your back, they're going to say great things when you're not in the room. They're going to be in an executive meeting and say, hey, I think we should give this person a chance. Or, hey, I think this person, even though doesn't have all the skills, I'm going to make sure that that person gets all the skills and give them a chance. So there's a big difference between mentorship and sponsorship. But I will say whenever you can and you're in a room and there's an opportunity and there's somebody that needs, just a little bit of help to get that next role, give them that opportunity. Be the one that sponsors people, because it helps everybody grow. And like I said, I've had sponsors my entire career. My old boss, who was the president of the business unit before me, was the one who fought for me for this job. And if it weren't for him, I would not have had the president role. He actually went to bat. They wanted to put me in an interim role. He's like, no way. You're not putting her in an interim role. She's going to be the president. And if it weren't for him, I would have had an interim role, and they would look for a nice young older gentleman to run the business unit. So it's definitely something that is really important, mentorship versus sponsorship, and something that I truly believe in. And like I said, it doesn't have to be formal. You just have to give up some time.
Yep.
And great advice. You have to give up, willing to be really honest with people too.
And know what you're really good at, right? So sometimes it seems overwhelming, but knowing that, hey, I'm really good at marketing, so I'm going to focus in on that. Or I'm really good at sales, so I'm going to focus in on that. And I think it is really critical, and it's a great story. And I think too, a lot of the people in the room that can be supporters or mentors, there is a little bit of a responsibility once you've kind of made it to give back a bit and to help someone that may be struggling, that just needs an opportunity. So that's great.
And when people say, how do I get a sponsorship, just let them know work hard.
Yeah.
Somebody will sponsor you when they see you working really hard.
Yep, that's for sure. So Kate, I want to move to you to talk a little bit about some of the programs that you have in place to mentor and sponsor with your title, Generation Next. I'm sure that there's some strategies that TD Ameritrade has that you've employed to do that throughout the organization.
Yeah, one of the things that we actually started to do about a year and a half ago, like every firm, we have a diversity problem. We don't talk about it a lot publicly, but we bring in people, whether it's women, people of color, military, women. We bring them in, but we watch as we go through our careers, and we don't retain them as well as we could, and we don't see them in the senior leadership roles that we want. And so I am part of the firm's D&I steering committee. We don't have an official chief diversity officer. So we've actually decided that diversity is something that has to be part of everyone's business. So there are 25 of us within all the business units that support this from the firm level. And about a year and a half ago, we started a management resource planning program for minorities. So we regularly do our management resource planning where we talk about everybody in our teams and we put people in a box, high performer, next in line for a promotion, take my job, this is my successor. We realized there was a group of people that were always getting talked about, and there was a large group of people, especially minorities, that weren't getting talked about enough. And so we each went out and identified 2 folks that we knew that were either in our business unit or we had contact with somewhere else, and we brought them to the table and we spent an entire day just talking about these folks. Most of them were low and mid-level managers. But we talked about them so that we had more awareness so 25 chief diversity officers, that's the entire company. So it's all the retail, institutional, trader business units, business development, sales, marketing, all of those different areas, to showcase these people and talk about them in front of everyone so that we now have opportunities for people to say, let me grab this person and bring them, I need them on a cross-functional team. We also then assigned a mentor to each one of them so that we have on a regular basis now, we're meeting with them and mentoring with them, and we're seeing progress. So they're getting more well-known. We've seen 8 promotions in the past year and a half since this has started. And we've seen 6 where it's lateral job moves, but they're getting exposed to a whole new group of people. So, it's something that we just started to do. We're starting into round 2 in January. We'll be bringing in our next group of folks that we're going to start to talk about. And it was funny because they said, well, when does the mentorship of everyone officially end? And we all went, well, we're not going to stop. I mean, you might not have it in your program, but I don't think any of us are going to stop mentoring these people. I think it's really important. And I think, one of the things that has also come out of it is mentorship is awesome, and we all have a duty to do that. But I also want to be mentored. So I've got 2 accountability partners who are women of a different race that are younger than me, one 10 years younger than me and one 20 years younger than me, who help mentor me. And I call them my accountability partners because we get together at least once a quarter to talk about things. And these are outside of my normal, who are all like me, the women that I work with. These folks, they take me to task. They do not, they take me to task. But it's a great kick in the butt that I need every quarter.
I think that's great. That's a great, and it's being intentional, right? I think that's like the number one thing around something that would be effective within an organization is you have to have intent. I'm going to shift gears to the topic of financial literacy or financial education and how that actually helps lead to financial independence. The better educated you are, we all talked about our first money memories, and how that affected who you are today. So, being able to be financially educated at a younger age is going to eventually lead to a more financially sophisticated investor, and that's, I think, going to be critical for our country moving forward. So, Alice, I'd really like for you to share some of the things that you're doing at JP Morgan around financial education, especially regarding women of color.
No, I'm happy to. I think what we realized at the firm is in order to be very intentional about it and to hold people accountable, we had to like make it a pillar and make it part of the business and put accountability metrics there. And just like you would do a business review, if you were, running a unit with Jamie and with all the senior people at the bank, we do the same thing here. And so we have several efforts. The first I'll talk about is Women on the Move. So we have one owner of it, and her job every day is to think about programs that empower our employees, obviously our women, to have career advancement. The second is to really help entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, with the education that they need for, whether it's access to capital or just all the technical skills that one needs. And then the third is really to focus in on, women of color and ensure that we have a very specific lens on that. We have another program that's called Advancing Black Pathways, again, very intentional in terms of helping not only our Black employees in the firm that are women, but also our customers. And so we hold what we call currency conversations. And what this is an opportunity to invite specifically Black women into our branches and make it comfortable enough, right, from a cultural perspective, that women are not afraid to talk about money. Because depending on, how you grew up and what your culture is, there are just some topics that are a little taboo. And we've really partnered with Essence to bring the women in and to be in a place where there is no shame, there is no judgment. No matter what, quote, mistakes you feel like you've made, you are with a group of other women that are really there to support you and, more importantly, to help you with a plan and a path, right, to move forward. And I got to tell you, I wasn't sure how this particular initiative was going to work out. And we have had branches with 200 women there, and tears, and and some tears of sadness, but then some tears of joy, right, in terms of feeling comfortable and, more importantly, getting the help that they need. Mm-hmm. And then just in terms of the role that I play today in my pillar, my team and I have created a lot of digital tools as well as great content and material for us to use with our employees and with our branches to get people more comfortable with financial literacy. At the end of the day, I think that as banks, I don't want to speak for my colleagues here on the panel, but we tend to use all this jargon that sounds very scary, and it's probably some of the reason that people do not jump in. And so what we've tried to do is make it very regular speak, so that it's understandable, and more importantly, people can know that it's not as scary as you think it is. Yeah. So I've been very proud of the commitment that we've had from our chairman all the way down to our OC members to make sure that we're on the forefront of this topic.
That's great. And to have a company like JP Morgan that's so visible be really committing to these initiatives is really half the battle. So thanks for leading that charge. And then Anna, I want you to discuss, in addition to women of color that we talked about, who else is being left out of the financial education equation, and how can we all help?
Yeah, well, one thing that our CEO is really passionate about, because we do bank so many nonprofits, is the lack of financial literacy in the nonprofit sector and in the leaders of the nonprofit sector, most of whom ended up in those roles because they were so passionate about the work, not because they had any real financial background. And so our bankers often, our commercial bankers, spend a lot of time with those leaders doing kind of basic education, breaking down some of those terms, and really trying to help them make sure that their organizations are healthy moving forward. And it's something that I think our business development team has sort of taken on ad hoc, and we're now thinking about what that looks like in a more formal way and how we can sort of continue to grow and deepen that particular set of financial literacy, which feels like it's probably not something that they would ever talk about publicly, because they're so concerned about making sure that they're eligible and sort of putting their best foot forward around getting grants and doing the fundraising that they need to do. But sort of as a quiet partner on the back end, we know to be true.
That's great. And, Savvy Ladies actually is doing that as well, right, from a financial education standpoint with their mission. So we're just about to the end of our panel, and I just wanted to ask each one of you, it's my famous last question, what's the one takeaway that you'd, in a very quick way, that you'd like to leave everyone with today before we go celebrate with each other and network with each other? So Kate, I'll start with you.
Just ask. I think we talked a little bit about it, but it's ask for that next piece. Ask for that next move. Ask for it. It's ask for things that you don't understand to make sure that you have that knowledge and that understanding. I think you and I have talked about this. We always think there's a secret handshake.
Yeah.
You've got to ask to figure out how this business works, how money works, how all of those things are. Savvy Ladies does a great job of helping people when they do ask, but it's on each of us to ask for it. Ask for that help.
Great advice. Cheryl?
So I would say, and this is, I always say this is just, and I said it earlier, surround yourself with the best people that you can, and surround yourself with people who aren't like you. We call it our personal advisory board, but make sure you have somebody who can help you in ways that you can't. So I'll give an example. My son is marrying a kindergarten teacher, and she's very creative. So when we have things like bring your kids to work day and fun little things like that, I'll ask her for ideas because that's her creative mind working with kids. And I surround myself with people who can actually make me better because I know that I need some people who do, have specialties that I don't have. But think about it as a personal advisory board. Ask people to be on your personal advisory board and use them in different areas where you need them, and surround yourself with people who always lift you higher.
Great advice. I do have a personal advisory board as
Do you
well.
too?
Love it.
I love mine.
Yes, they'll definitely give you the feedback that you need at times, right?
Yes.
Alice, how about you?
I would say have the courage to be uncomfortable, and that means taking the risk. And I think you might have mentioned it earlier about how women feel like they have to be 100% like qualified, and they overthink it. And I just think that if you're not uncomfortable, then you're not growing as much as you need to.
Great advice.
I love that personal advisory board idea. I'm making a mental list right now. And I would just add to that and say I think that there's so much more power and we're so much stronger when we're a collective and when we use a collective voice. Whether it's around your own career and your own job or around sort of the inequities that we talked about at the beginning of the panel that are pervasive in the workplace.
Yep, so great. Well, with that, I'd like to give this fabulous panel a round of applause. Thank you for sharing your stories, your journey, your advice, your best practices. I hope you enjoyed it. Sometimes we all need to take a little bit of time out of our day and just listen, right, and be inspired. I think that's so critical, and we know we don't all do it as enough as we should. So with that, I believe we are now off to the champagne reception, and then the awards start at 6:30. And we'll get to celebrate some other fantastic women. We have a great silent auction out there, some great items, and a wine pull. There's some amazing bottles of wine. So now I will turn it over to Stacy.
So I just want to say a great big thank you to our amazing moderator, Suzanne Syracuse, is one of our amazing board members and worked so hard. Our wonderful panel as well. And I have 3 takeaways that I took from this. I mean, I have many more, but I'm going to keep it to 3 because that's what I hear is, what we normally can keep. Number 1, pushing the bar, pushing yourself forward, even when you're uncomfortable, right? Number 1. Number 2, investing in your financial literacy. Because the thing that I heard from all of these women is that there were opportunities that you were able to take because you felt secure financially. There were also opportunities to leave situations, whether you're working or, you're in I'm not saying this is you, but we find women in bad marriages or, living in places they don't want to live, but that can leave because of finances. We realize that financial literacy leads to better money decisions. Better money decisions leads to women having an emergency fund, a cushion that allows them opportunities to not be cornered into unsafe and situations that you wouldn't want to be in. And that's what Savvy Ladies is all about. And you embody Savvy Ladies. We have educated tens of thousands of women, teaching them both one-on-one through our helpline with our 50 plus CFP financial planner volunteers, as well as the thousands and thousands of women that have attended our live webinars, our TED Talk like videos, and our live events. And that's what we're here tonight to make a difference. And I'm so excited because the difference we have to make, we can't do it alone. These tens of thousands of women we've worked with, that's fantastic. But that's a drop in the bucket, and there's so much more we need to do. So I want to say thank you for being here, and please join a toast across the way to celebrate our success of a wonderful night, a great night, and celebrate the success of what these women are doing to make change. Thank you.